We're going to watch a little bit of this video. I'm not going to play the whole video because it is, pretty violent, and it's just some parts that I just don't want to display. It is other places, so if you want to see it there, you can go and see it.
Human being should go to get coffee and die on a floor from a heart attack.
Cameras caught everything. Grayson walks in at 8:09 with purpose. A woman who came back for a specific reason and intends to be heard. At the counter, the exchange with the 17-year-old employee escalates fast. The teenager is visibly uncomfortable. She is a minor in a uniform being berated by a customer with no real training for what comes next and no authority to resolve it on her own. August Horner steps in. She positions herself between Grayson and the younger worker, tells Grayson to leave, and tries to manage a situation that is already running hot. Grayson moves to get around her, toward the teenager. Horner puts her hands on Grayson's arm to block her path. That contact is the ignition point. Within seconds, Grayson shoves Horner backward and strikes her in the face, left side, near the nose. How closely people were watching, and how much they were primed to find. What the police-released recording does confirm is the 13 minutes that followed the separation. Grayson walked to a table and sat down. She made a phone call, coherent, upright, present. Then she bent down, collected strands of hair from the floor around her, and placed them into her bag. At 8:22, she lay down.
From the initial clips that were going around online with this video, it can be easy to look at it and get upset until you start dissecting it, right? You have this altercation where there's a young teenager working inside of this restaurant, an older lady. She originally went through the drive-through. Something was wrong with her order, so she goes in to have them correct the order, and an altercation ensues from there. In the footage, you see her, originally she's standing on the front side of the counter, and then she goes around to the side where these two employees were. And the first time that I saw this video, to me, in my opinion, it looked like that she did not put her hands on those young people that were standing there. Now, doing a deeper dive into that video and just looking at it from a deeper angle, I could see where she was initially talking to a person that was behind the manager, the young lady that she got into a fight with. And she was coming closer to that particular person. And the manager stepped in and she was trying to stop the altercation. Now, one thing that she did that may have been the biggest mistake to trigger everything was that she touched the woman's shoulder as she was walking closer to tell her to move back. From there, the elderly lady, she hit the girl on the side of the face, and that's kind of where the whole commotion started. So you see them fighting in the video, and then they stumble a few feet, and the fight, it gets a little bit further out. The elderly woman pulls out a clump of hair from the young girl, and then eventually they, break the fight apart. Now you see the elderly woman, she goes to the other side of the restaurant, and she's able to make a phone call. She is still fully aware at this point of what has just happened. She hasn't completely left the restaurant, and then at some point she sits down at a table. Now this part of the video cut off, but she sits down at the table, and at this point, this is where she, passed out. And before that, they did state that some of the workers possibly brought her water. I can't confirm exactly how true that is, but they brought her water, and she sat at this table a little bit longer, and eventually she passed out and she became unresponsive. Now, my whole take on this situation is one to two things is very important. The most important thing is that no one should go to a restaurant, to a drive-through, whether it's inside or outside, and lose their life over something as simple as a cup of coffee or a breakfast menu item. It's also very important that in this day and time that we know how to control our temper, how to control our emotions. And if you ask me, just being honest, some people may like this, some people may not, but there was a lack of emotional accountability on both sides. So we don't know exactly if this young employee was trained to deal with customers when situations escalate to such. And then this elderly lady, she had a pacemaker in, but I would say after 70 to 75 years on earth, you do have more experience in how to deal with certain situations, or ideally we would think that one would, but that's not always the case, right? So you have people that are raised from different backgrounds and just different walks of life, right? So I think no one wants to see their grandmother in this position, especially, a hierarchy in your family, for them to go in and just be getting a cup of coffee and then, they get into this altercation to the point where it takes their life. And that's something that's very serious. Now, like I said, initially, I thought that I really just thought that, the people from the restaurant was in the wrong. But looking at the video, the young lady did try to like push her back from coming closer. So maybe this elderly lady, she took that as like, just don't put your hands on me. And for some people that can trigger them, it could be a trigger, like, you just don't touch me at all. There, you could just talk to me, have a conversation, even though she was walking up on them. So it's just so many fine lines that I feel like were crossed in this situation. Once she hit the girl in the face, I just feel like that totally changed it. And maybe I could be wrong, but I just don't feel like I am. I think sometimes when people are elderly, they feel like because they have grandchildren or people around the age, that they're able to do certain things because they've been on the earth longer, or maybe that's how they interact with their own grandchildren or their youth that's in their family. But what we have to understand is that we're dealing with a totally different generation and a totally different society that will respond a whole different way. And I hear a lot of people say that these young people don't have respect for the elderly anymore. But like I said, there's two sides to every coin. And this elderly lady, I felt like maybe she shouldn't have walked up on them, because once you start minimizing space, right, that brings the altercation up to a whole nother level. So it could start here. If I'm here, right, and you're over there, and we're just yelling at each other across the room, and that kind of leaves space for us to either at some point go in different directions, and the situation that kind of diffuse itself. But that's not what happened here. The closer that they got, the more chances it became for that situation to escalate and just end as horribly as it did. I saw some videos where community leaders were speaking out about it, and then her family, her children, they came out to speak about what they saw happen. And it's just such a terrible and such a senseless crime and situation. And we're starting to see more and more and more situations like that in this day in time. And I feel like what I was gonna state on earlier, you have movies like Medea that shows like the angry black woman or the angry elderly woman that can present herself any way that she wants in society. And unfortunately, that is just not true, because like I said, we're dealing with a totally different generation. And even these young people, whether you're old, whether you're young, everybody has to know that there is a point where you can be touched. We can be touched, we can be accessed, and we all bleed the same color. So you're not going to cut anybody else and they bleed a different color. We just have to be mindful how we conduct ourselves in these situations, whether you're the older person, whether you're the younger person. Now, it's going to be really interesting to me to see how this situation shapes up and how it turns out. I think there's multiple messages in this story about just what not to do and how to conduct ourselves better. It's just so many messages to take from this unfortunate situation, but they are going to have the responsibility of proving what actually did take her life. Was it the altercation that she got into with this young lady? Was it the pacemaker that she had on her chest because she had been having health problems and she had a pacemaker installed a few days before? Or was it something that she actually ingested, when she was in a drive-through? Maybe she didn't like the ingredients or the taste of something. So they are going to, have to prove that it was either three of those was the cause of her demise. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think was at fault in this situation? Do you think it was the young teenager that may have had a lack of training on how to deal with these situations, or do you think it was the elderly woman? Do you think that she could have conducted herself in a better way, or did she conduct herself in the correct way? Was she in the right to be upset about the coffee? And the initial touch, do you think that the young lady should have touched her? Was it an aggressive touch, or was it a de-escalation touch? As far as the older lady taking the first hit, I really want to know the breakdown of what you guys think, because this is just going to be so interesting to watch this unfold, and I'm going to do my best to follow it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in again. Peace, love, and blessings.